all I have is the hope and the fear of God. And I pray in the next life, if there is an afterlife, that it is better than the one I'm living. Isn't that deep? Is that not deep? Well, James Baldwin's book, Go Tell It on the Mountain, embodies that almost in every character that's in this book. That's how they're walking. That's the burden they're living with, and they're trying to navigate this difficult world that they're living in the early 1900s. Listen, this was an excellent read, and I want to talk about it. So let's get right into it. Hello, beautiful people. If you are new here, I am Darnaya Darice, first name, middle name. On this channel, I do lifestyle motivation and bookish content. You'll get book reviews, recommendations, but also information where we can apply it, what we're learning, to everyday life. So if you like to be encouraged, empowered, and challenged at the same time, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, like, comment, share. Okay, let me know what you're reading. Let me know what you're up to, your goals. How's your first quarter going? We're almost at the end of first quarter, okay, 2025, and we're still going. Resilience, yes. All right, so as you saw by the intro, the thumbnail, and the title, I'm going to be talking about James Baldwin's book, Go Tell It on the Mountain. This was such an excellent read. This is my first book that was on my TBR for March, and I'm so glad I read it. And if you haven't read it, or you have, let me know. Have you read it yet? Haven't? What would you think about it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I would love to know it. But it's so much that you can pull from the Black experience from the early 1900s, moving into the Harlem Renaissance, the Roaring 20s, even till now. We see a lot of those implications that he places in the book. The Black experience of Black people we're still dealing with, or we can relate to. The book was very relatable. I'm like, some of the aunties and grandmas, I'm like, that's my grandma right there. I done heard that phrase. And so you get a lot of that in this book, and it's so much that is touched and exposed in this book. In some instances, I felt like you got a little satire when it comes to religious or church behavior, if you will, and what we experience in the church, how people behave, how people gossip, how people talk about each other, and consider some people holy based on how they dress, and some people not holy when they're doing adult things, and attribute things in different ways, almost like, hey, correlation leads to causation. You see a lot of that in here, or the implications of that. And so I want to talk about it. I have a lot of notes here that I took from the book that I wanted to hit. But overall, this was an excellent read. I rated it a 4.5. It's just so beautiful. The way he wrote the book was very easy to read. It was such a great flow. I felt like I was hearing him because I watched several interviews by him they are still available on YouTube, and I can hear his voice while I'm reading the book. And I love the way he wrote the book. It's so excellent, so refreshing, and it's raw. Like, I mean, it is so raw, with all the way from the language to the message. What you're going to get from there is the real deal. Now, some of the things they touched on in the book, it starts opening with a character named John, who is a young teenage boy, and his parents. He has a mother and a father who we later find out, the father is Gabriel, but we later find out is actually his stepfather, because in part 2, it gets into the prayers of some of the characters. A lady named Florence, who is Gabriel's sister, and they did not have a great relationship so well growing up. It's almost like sibling rivalry, but very deep, the qualms of the mom like this one over this one, or this one was doing things that this one didn't like, or this one was rude and mean, this one was dark, this one was light. It was just those carrying over, right? And then you have a character named Deborah, who was the first wife of Gabriel, and we found out that he didn't really, when Gabriel starts to tell his story, or we get the life. Now, this is written from a narrative point of view, but once they get into telling his story, it's like, I hate my wife, I don't like being married to her. And it's not like that he necessarily hated her. He felt called to her because he was one who was out in the streets drinking and doing whatever, all with the ladies, and then he eventually gave his life to Christ and got saved, and he started to try to live the life of a upstanding preacher, if you will, but one who has fallen, so they say, doing adult things, right? And then he ends up, Deborah's one who used to go to his church and been praying for him, and he felt called to marry her. But she was barren. She couldn't have children. Some ways he described her, she wasn't as beautiful, she was old, but he still respected her enough to stay in the marriage until she passed away. And then eventually he married someone else named Elizabeth, who was first friends with Florence. So when you get in the book, you get you're gonna get different stories from each of those characters. But overall, in the themes, you're dealing with poverty. Of course, it's the early 1900s, so you're dealing with a lot of tension between white neighborhoods, black neighborhoods, or white people and black people intertwining, and black people being lynched on this, or lynched down south and up north. Black people dealing with, especially black men, getting arrested for things they didn't do, and some things that some other people have done, and so you have that battle there. So you're dealing with a lot of poverty, and in that poverty brings a lot of frustration, which Baldwin does a great job with illustrating that through the lines of faith, right? And so a lot of these characters, they use faith in some ways to justify harmful and toxic behavior, which we run into today. All on the guise of, I'm trying to be holy, I'm trying to get the devil out of you, or I don't want you to go to hell, or, things like that. And we see a lot how Baldwin plays into that, and he kind of uses the teenage characters like John and Roy to show the harmfulness of a lot of how the adults and parents are behaving, how they treat. You see abuse, parental abuse a little bit with the children. Some of the children, you see favoritism. It's a lot that he covers in here, but he does it so well and beautifully done. You also see that some of the characters who started down south, like Gabriel and Florence, their mom was sickly, but she was like a praying mom. She was sort of what we would call today hyper religious, and she really wanted her son. She gave up on the daughter Florence, but she wanted her son as he got older to give his life to God, and before she died, and so he was going through those battles, and he wanted to sort of get his life right, but not knowing what right was. Okay, get his life together, which is fine and good, but he didn't know what that was. And so we get the implications of those characters feeling like, if I move up north, I'm going to have a better life, I'm going to have more opportunities, right? We've heard that, we've seen that in history, where some thought, and that's still what some people teach, you got better options in the north. But when most of these characters got to the north, they found out, I'm dealing with the same struggles. I'm still impoverished. I'm still living in slummish, dirty, nasty areas, small contained rooms. I still have to kind of limit myself, or pay attention, be overly alert to make sure I don't offend this person over here or this person over there who may harm me. Or try to cause harm. So you're dealing with that, and it's something in his book that I really love, is he highlights that it's really no difference from the North and South. It's just the North offered more promises. Think about that. So when you learn about that, pay attention to, when you're really studying, you're really reading, you will see that in those times, neither was better. There was still, it's this false notion that, I didn't have to deal with such racism or this or that if we go up north, or we have more job opportunities. No, they still, with the move, they still had to work lower paying jobs. They have less options. They couldn't go in certain neighborhoods. It's just, they couldn't be out certain times of the night. And if they did, they were at risk of being harmed, or falsely accused in some way, which a lot happened like that in the South. So I love the way he outlined that throughout the characters: Gabriel, Florence, Elizabeth, who was the later wife. And now when it got to Elizabeth later in the book, towards the end of part 2, it was really good. Like, her story, like, I guess she's one of my favorite characters from this book. It was a young girl. She was deemed as dark, and she was also pretty. She had the mother, her mother, for some reason, did not love her as she wished, because she felt like she was dark. But the father, who was dark, loved her much. But she got taken away from her father by the aunt when the mother ended up dying. And it was like so much frustration from there, because she didn't get the love that she was being told she was getting from the aunt. So the aunt played and talked with everybody else like, oh, I love my niece and this and that. But Elizabeth knew, like, her actions don't show that she even liked me, because I am my the aunt who took her in was the mother's sister, not the father's. And she felt like the father wasn't fit to raise a young daughter, because he ran a little, what they call the house, you know, where people come to drink, smoke, and play cards and do adult things, okay? And so she felt that resentment, not against her dad, but against the aunt. And so you can see how kids know, children know, you can't play around with emotions. Oh, I love this one. When you're dealing with stepchildren, or you're dealing with family members from the other side, you can't play with those things, because they can feel, no matter what you say, they can feel and see how you actually behave. So that's something he highlights in this book. Also, he highlights toxic relationships. He highlights love and marriage in the name of doing things the right way. So the marriages in the book that is highlighted there, we see that it's really none that are healthy. They all kind of toxic in the name of faith, though, because we see Gabriel married 2 people, Deborah and Elizabeth, and both times when he got married and remarried, it was under the guise of what he thought, I'm being led to be married with you, to you, or a calling, right? But it led to him not really loving her first son, who was John, that she had by an earlier relationship, who that person unalived himself. And so you're dealing with those issues, and that person did sort of treat her right and was kind of good to her and love her, but after being accused of something that he didn't do and finally released from prison, he is just a lot that he didn't seem like he could take. And so that's unfortunate. And so you see the turmoil, the constant turmoil, living in poverty, and then battling with the notions of religion and faith. Like, if there is a God, we must fear God, or we're going to be condemned. It's like, I'm going to place fear in you and make you believe in something. I want you to act this way and behave this way and live this way. And there are other characters that are saying, hey, I see you saying that, but you're still in turmoil. You're still in poverty. Your life is not any better than mine. So I want to live it how I want to live it and enjoy my life, which they have a right to do. And so you can see how you don't see the love thy neighbor. You don't see, the good of the Lord, if you will, when you're talking or when you're reading about those who are in religion. You see religion and faith being used to condemn others, to dehumanize others, and to also force, hey, I want to make you believe what I believe in. Let me sit down and pray all day, because that's all we got to do. We got to wait, because the Lord's going to save us from this ratchet world. And you see, this whole time while they're living, and they see their parents, what happened to their parents. They're seeing what happens to them and their children, that there is no external being that yet has come to save us. We have to get up and do for ourselves and save ourselves. And so that is another underlying theme that is in here, but I wanted to make sure I highlight some of the quotes in this book. Florence on page 182, she says, folks said Florence can change their ways much as they want to, but I don't care how many times you change your ways. What's in you is in you, and it's got to come out. Isn't that true? Isn't that true? You're gonna know people for who they are by what comes out, what they say, who they are, how they behave, how they walk and show up in life. You're gonna know them, all right? And so pay attention. But she says, people can change their ways all they want, but who they are is who they are. And so she was a funny character as well. She was very bold, very loud, very conflicted character. So once you read it, you'll know what I'm talking about. Florence also said, I ain't never seen it to fail. Look like ain't no woman born what don't get walked over by some no count man. Look like ain't no woman nowhere but ain't been dragged down in the dirt by some man and left there too while he gone on about his business. And what she was saying there is like, I ain't seen no woman scorned by a man. And that's so unfortunate to have to live by that. And how many women still to this day, you may have heard your grandma, you may have heard your mom or your great grandma or somebody say, have this notion of putting in the space that all men are horrible, all women are going to be scorned. And that's a troubling and a hard way to live, right? And we don't look at the other side. This book does a good job of showing the teenager John and Roy's side, showing Gabriel's side, showing the side of the man, and showing that even Gabriel with his issues and his complications and his actions still shows that he is trying. He's looking for what's the best way to do A, B, and C. He tried to do right by his first wife, Deborah. He ended up cheating on her several times, and the person ended up having a child. But you can see the conflict that he told that person, I'm not leaving my wife. What you thought it was, and then eventually the wife found out when she became much older and ill, or she told him that she knew, and he finally confessed and was like, yeah. But he always had this troubling battle with wanting to do and what's the best way to do. If you haven't read this, listen, go read it. It's so good. It's so many nuggets you can apply to your life and think and open your eyes to other perspectives and how to do better and how to respond, because a lot of these characters respond to each other. I'm like, oh no, baby, don't talk to your kids like that. Don't talk to your loved ones like that, and we have to address toxic behavior. We have to address harmful behavior that gets excused on behalf of faith or religion. So I love that Baldwin highlights this. And I think, beautiful satire. I said that. Yeah, it was just an excellent read. So let me know if you read this, if it's good. But I hope you enjoyed this book review, and everything that you do and who you are. Always remember to keep rising.
Taking just be. Don't take it. Taking just don't be.